Tennessee at Jacksonville. Look, I have been such a big believer of Trevor Lawrence since he came in, and it feels like this last week the whole world has turned on him. Is now the opportunity for Trevor Lawrence to really, like he did last year, kick into gear and finish the season strong and show the true superstar that he is?
It would definitely be kind of overdue in some ways because, this was a guy who this offseason people viewed as somebody who could take the leap up to like the Justin Herbert level of quarterback tiers. And he was being drafted not that far behind that. And that whole tier of quarterback has really been a disaster, whether you're talking about Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, and then Trevor Lawrence, who has remained healthy, but performances they've not been there. He's the QB 25 in points per game. And what we talked about in the offseason, when we had Josh Norris on the channel as well, talked about the fact that Calvin Ridley could be able to help them open up the downfield passing game, and it just hasn't happened for one reason or another. This game, though, is definitely the kind of spot which can be a get-right spot, really. The Titans struggle against the pass. They've, given up plenty of big passing games to players. But they still haven't allowed a top 7 quarterback finish. They've only allowed 2 300-yard passing games. And it doesn't feel like this could be as explosive as we might want. I feel confident in Christian Kirk. I think, if you can take your dart throws at Calvin Ridley, because the Titans are so poor against wide receivers, they rank 31st versus wide receiver 1s in DVOA, 25th versus wide receiver 2s. And I'd be fine taking shots on them. I think it's probably going to be a bit of a tricky matchup for Travis Etienne. He's had 4 top 5 finishes in the last 5 games, you can see on screen. But Tennessee have allowed the 3rd fewest running back receptions at only 2.9 per game. So it doesn't feel like it's going to be a massive day for him. I think on the other side of things, this is such a condensed offense. We've got Derrick Henry, who's the RB17 in points per game. We've got DeAndre Hopkins, who's the wide receiver 31. When Will Levis jumped onto the scene and he had that 26-point debut, it felt like this could be the gunslinger that was going to be fantastic for fantasy purposes all season long. And then he's had back-to-back single-digit games since then. So it's been a little bit disappointing. But I think, this is a kind of game where I'd be open to playing small correlations within it, where you'd go in, okay, I'll play Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins. Or going, okay, perhaps I'll play Calvin Ridley with DeAndre Hopkins, try and get a bit more different. But it's not as fruitful as I'd like it to be. The Jags do allow the 12th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Where they're really vulnerable is on the outside ones, which is why I keep bringing up DeAndre Hopkins. He started the season playing in the slot a little bit more, and since then the Titans seem to have realized that to get the best out of him, they should put him on the boundary. And this game against the Jags, who lead the league in points given up to wide receivers on the boundary, perhaps it's a game where he can go off, but I'm just not sure I'm confident enough in it to really go all in and stack this game heavily in DFS.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about DeAndre Hopkins and his use as a boundary receiver. That's been my biggest issue with Calvin Ridley over the past kind of 2 months, 3 months, really, is that I did a bit of a deep dive this week when I watched as much of the tape as I could possibly, and he's getting open, he's winning, but the problem is that they're not using him in easy, simple ways. They are basically saying, you're an outside receiver, go and win deep, go and win outside, and that's it. There's no usage out of the slot. There's very little crossing routes. There's very little, dig, shallow crosses, anything like that. And it just feels like they're almost making life hard for Trevor Lawrence and saying, you're a superstar, go and win us games. We don't need to make it easy for you. And I just can't get my head around it. This is Doug Peterson, when he was in Philadelphia, when we saw Carson Wentz in the MVP conversation, when we saw Nick Foles win a Super Bowl, it was all about the RPOs. Let's make life easy for the quarterback. Let's have those easy completions to inside receivers. And I just can't get my head around why Jacksonville aren't doing it. And I know there's some potential rumors that Doug Peterson's going to take over a little bit more of the play calling, maybe after giving it up in the offseason. To me, if that happens, this Jacksonville offense could take a big step because it feels like it's there, like it's close. I know that I feel like I've been saying this for about 2 months, but it's there. You can almost see it. They just need that little bit more oomph, I feel.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think, the Titans are a team that you should never take lightly. Like, Mike Vrabel's record against the spread is really strong. His team, he gets the best out of players who possibly don't deserve to be starting games at times. And, this is one of those AFC South grudge matches. Things can get messy in them. And I think that if the Jags aren't able to beat the Titans, that they're going to suddenly start looking over their backs at the Texans, who are gaining ground on them rapidly.